Okay, hello, this is Vampire back again with another Captain Fairbairn topic. This time, I want to take a look at his actual knife combat method. And this is a big deal. This is a big deal because the guy was really, really into knives, it seems like. In fact, I would say he was known for knife and also pistol. And we could kind of like think about, and this is just my own speculations, and this whole video is just going to be my speculations, my 2 cents, and I'm just going to share how it makes sense to me, and once again, maybe it could be useful to you or interesting. um, so the guy, to me, he was teaching. I mean, we know for a fact that he was teaching World War II. He was the combatives instructor for the British. He started off, I believe, with the Special Forces, but then he eventually, like his system, gutter fighting, was for all soldiers, for the Allied, uh, for the Allied side, right? Um, and not just for special forces, primarily British, not just special forces, but then all British soldiers. But then when there was a threat of the Germans invading England, then it was like also for civilians. So it was for everybody, right? And then of course, um, you know, they brought over his stuff to the U.S. as well. But even though he was teaching for World War II, I mean, by that time he was a pretty, pretty decent age. So to me, he's kind of like from a time before his era, because by that time I think he already was kind of done with his system, or he had a really good idea of putting it together, right? So his stuff was before, his era was before World War II. And if you're talking about like World War One, my understanding of World War One compared to World War II combat was that World War One was more close quarters because of the trench fighting. Not saying that it didn't happen in World War II, but in just my opinion, from what I've read, from what I heard, it seemed like World War One was more CQC, and that's why when you look at their stuff, their weapons, the spade, which is their shovel, right, the trench shovel, that was a very effective weapon. Which later on today, in more modern times, we hear about the Spetsnaz and the Russian special forces really, really liking the shovel, and you may have seen it in like Sistema that they're practicing with the shovel. Um, and they could freaking throw it like a tomahawk too. That the shovel was a very effective CQC, close quarters combat weapon. Same with the bayonet, right? That's another one where they attach the blade, a freaking blade, onto your rifle because they're expecting you to have to fight in close quarters. And then of course the knife itself. The knife was what I've seen with the trench knives. Oh man, there's one, a famous one, has a skull crusher. The looks like a brass knuckle combined with a knife. I mean that thing looks devastating. Um, it's basically like a dagger, right? So it's two-sided blade, brass knuckle for the handle, and then it has a skull crusher. I mean, talk about, it seems like overkill. But so out of those three weapons, right? So Captain Fairbairn, who let's say his perspective is more from World War One rather than World War Two. World War Two, he was preparing for. He was helping out. That he didn't know exactly yet what the soldiers were going through. Let's say as much, maybe. So he still has a World War One mindset. So he's thinking about that, and he could have chose any weapon. right? And I think it's interesting he chose the knife, and he's also known for the pistol. He chose both of those things, and I think it's no coincidence. It's just my speculation, but I think it comes from his police days. So in his police days, when he was working at the Shanghai, police department, I believe that you're not gonna really so much encounter people walking around with like a shovel or a bayonet. You're more likely to see a knife. You're more likely to see a pistol. So those are the two weapons that he probably experienced and saw during those days in his when he was a police officer. So to me that carried over where he could see that in police from a police officer's perspective in civilian life, but then he could also see it being used in on the battlefield as well. So, but to me, he wanted his stuff to work in both fields, is what I'm trying to say. And to me, that is a similarity in Eskrima. Eskrima that I learned could be used in the battlefields, but it could also be used in civilian life. So right away, Captain Fairbairn has resonated with me. It makes sense to me, and it works well with what I'm trying to do. It works well with my system. So there's no, there's no doubt in my mind why Captain Fairbairn had such a strong impact on me. I mean, in 1990 is when I started martial arts. So I was in junior high school. I graduated in 94. So that same year, I went to a university where they had a big library. And at that library, boom, I found Captain Fairbairn's Get Tough. And immediately it left a huge impact. At that point, I knew I was like, this is going to be a big part of my martial arts journey. I don't know what it was. I couldn't tell you what exactly, but it just, there was a strong connection immediately. So at that time, I had been doing 4 years of Arnis actually, and my teacher had told me to cross train. I looked at him, and he obviously was a result of cross training. He cross trained a lot in the past. That's what he was teaching us, a mixture of things. And where he learned Filipino martial arts was from Professor Remy Presas. Professor Remy Presas was also a guy that was into cross training and said, you got to make it your own. Meaning, one of the meanings was, hey, go cross train and combine it with, whatever style suits you. Combine the Arnis with that. So, for me, Captain Fairbairn's method was one of the ones that I was gonna combine it. I was taking down notes and everything, and I was like, man, this is it. This is gonna be in my arsenal. So anyway, Captain Fairbairn is just been it just works with, makes sense and works, and this just might be my own interpretation, and I don't know how much of that I'm making it work with my system, but it just seems such a natural fit. That's all I gotta say. So moving along, right here, this first photo, see the soldier has a smatchet. That's what Captain Fairbairn called it. I believe he is the sole designer. Maybe he joined forces with somebody else to design it as a collaboration. I don't know, but it's one of the knives that he designed. And this one, as you can see, it's a beast of a knife. I mean, it's more of a short sword than a knife. Look at that thing. Even if it's not sharp, even if you don't have the skill, good cutting skill, I mean, if you just swung that at someone full force, just the weight alone, you could smack somebody and probably maybe even break or chip bone. So it's going to be devastating, right? So that's one of the weapons he designed for, specifically for the battlefield. But here's another one. This is his knife. So did he design both of these? Could have been, but this is one of the knives that he features in this video, and he seems to favor. And you can see this is a completely different animal. This knife is totally different. This is the knife that you're going to see in civilian life that he can carry. whereas to smash it, he's going to take into the battlefield. So two totally different purposes, two different knives. So this is the one I really want to focus on right here. Okay. And then, so now let's talk about the actual method. How did he fight with this? And boom. It's hard to see from this photo alone. It's better if you watch the video. And I'm thank goodness there's a video, really, really, because there's only so much you can convey in the book, and or so much that he has said and mentioned in the book that it's hard to get some of this information out. But you can see he is, this obviously, that's a slash. Okay, he's doing a slash. And the movements that he portrays is very light, quick, agile. It almost looks like a butterfly floating around when it's like he's twirling his knife, okay? So this movement to me is very similar with what you see in Filipino martial arts with the sticks. Very light, you see the circular twirling type motions. And so I instantly see another similarity right there. Okay, so that's what he's doing. He's slashing, okay? And in Filipino martial arts, we do a lot of slashing. We've been criticized for not stabbing. We stab too. We have thrusts, we do stab, but we have a lot of slashes. And right here, Captain Fairbairn is also doing slashes, okay? So, you know, I'm sorry. I know there's a lot of people that disagree, but I'm going with Captain Fairbairn. I'm going with traditional Filipino martial arts. It's all about the slash, okay? Now, that being said, this to me is maybe, let's say, 90% of the time you're doing this. But it's really to camouflage this. So there, that's a thrust, that's a stab. But like I said, 90% of the time, this does not come into play. So this is like 10% of the time, maybe less. All right. Why? Why do I say that? Well, first of all, Captain Fairbairn's movements, he was doing this, like I said. And they even show footage of like tennis, skiing, and other sport like basketball. All right. So they're showing sports stuff. Why? He's trying to tell you that this is an athletic thing. You got to be light. You got to be quick. You got to be like an athlete. He's showing you that, all right? And to me, this is the jab in boxing. And most of the fight is going to be the jab. The jab is going to occur a lot more than this, because when you do this, you could get countered. When you do this, this is when you're in danger. So most of the time, it's the jab. So that's why it makes sense to me boxing-wise. It makes sense to me Filipino martial arts-wise. It makes sense to me Captain Fairbairn-wise, okay? So this is your KO shot. And I see some people teaching only this. They go, why are you slashing? This is a waste of time. This is what gets the job done. You should be doing this. Well, like I said, you watch a boxer, most of the time it's the jab. You watch Captain Fairbairn, to me, what he's conveying is most of the time you're doing this. And in a street situation, street self-defense situation, do you need to go here? Why? The bad guy attacks me, assaults me. And I do this because this is the first thing I do, right? So if I can, I do this. At that point, what did he want? Did he want my wallet? You know, why would he just want to attack me and kill me or whatever? He wants something, right? At this point, if I'm doing this, he failed. He failed at what he's doing. So then I don't need to go here, because that guy at right here, he should be running away. And he should be going, man, I screwed up. That was the wrong victim, or that was the wrong approach. I need to go after somebody else. So this should end it most of the time. I don't know why you got to finish somebody. This is when they hang around with you and they're doing this back to you. So you're in this like sport tag, game of death, tag game that's of death. That's what's happening here. All right. Why would he continue that? Unless I got him back to the wall and he has no other choice but to fight for his life. Unless I do something like that, he's probably just going to run away. And I want to run away too. So then the possibility of this is much, much lower. So I don't need to go here, even though this is for this. Now, another thing I want to I want to clarify is, you see his right arm is out and his right leg is to the front, right? So very fencing-like. So this is why I'm talking to you guys about knife fencing. And I like that I just gave you examples of boxing, saying that this is similar to boxing with a jab. So to me, that is the connection between boxing and fencing, historical connection to me, and you know, and that's why I've trained in both knife boxing and also knife fencing. I teach both, and to me, you got to explain both in order to understand this stuff. You need to have knowledge of both, because when do you do what, and when do you do the other, you know? So anyway, this right here is knife fencing, right? Knife fencing, similar to that. So right arm, right leg. Now look at this. This looks even more like fencing, but it's right arm and left leg. So he does both. In Filipino martial arts, we learned this, the weapon side to the front. However, we do body shifting, you know, and we end up here a lot. It happens a lot. And we do both, you know. We start off, and our primary stance is this, weapon side to the front, including, you know, the weapon side. So that's just not just the arm, it's the arm and leg. Weapon side, your whole body, the side. That one side is going to be towards the front. And that's what you're seeing here. Yet, this can happen. So we train in both. So once again, Captain Fairbairn, what he's showing, and what I see in Filipino martial arts, very similar. Now, in boxing and also in fencing, the current sports of boxing and fencing today, I think they try to avoid this as much as possible. In Filipino martial arts, I don't think so. And Captain Fairbairn's method, he's showing both. So why? Why is that? Well, when you're battling someone at a very high skill level, and where the rules are confined, I think you have to stick with one. You can't switch. You know, if you start switching, you're not going to do well. Imagine playing tennis, right? And you start switching to your left hand. You're going to open weaknesses for yourself. So it's like, no, you stick with one. If you're right-handed, you're going to be right-handed. So to me, that's a primary example. Go play some tennis. Would you switch hands? If you're a total beginner and it doesn't matter, then yeah. But once you start learning a little bit, and maybe, you know, you're okay at no, not even, you don't even have to be okay at tennis. Maybe you're like, okay, I'm starting to be able to get to the point where I can play tennis a little bit, you know. So that's at that level, which is still a beginner. At that level, try switching hands. No way. You're not gonna. Okay. So I think that's all that means, right? But in the street, where things are just more chaotic and it's not a skill versus skill battle, it could be, you got to just face his aggression. You got to just, oh, this guy's just coming at you hard. Then it's whatever side you're in, whatever foot's forward, whatever arm's forward, that's how you're going to be fighting, because there's just no time, and it's not a skill versus skill test of, you know, skill test. It is just a more of an aggression kind of thing. So in that kind of thing, you know, I think you're able to do, or this kind of thing works better. If you're going, no, this is not right, I need to switch stance, the guy's on you already. So for street, this seems to be better. Where in a higher skill level sport, I think you got to stay in one stance. So, okay, it just depends on who you're facing, right? Now, the next thing I want to talk about real quick is this. Okay, so this right here is a completely different animal. So obviously this is not the same as this situation. So then to me, Captain Fairbairn understands the different scenarios, the different situations. Boom. So this is coming up from behind and taking out a soldier that's doing like sentry guard, guard duty. You're taking him out from behind, right? So whereas this is you're facing each other and you're combating each other, right? Totally different situation. So Captain Fairbairn understood that. He understood that the situation dictates how you fight. Okay. So that's the way that I see it also. And when you look at it, the one common, the most common DNA in that is distance to me. Okay. Now this is a different scenario. Okay, and this really doesn't. It's not so much about distance, but because this is you're sneaking up from behind. This is like Rambo 2. If you've seen that movie, it's an awesome movie. Where Rambo's using guerrilla warfare tactics and taking out, the Russian soldiers. Like there's that one famous scene where he is, he looks like he's just a wall of mud, and he just comes out of nowhere and takes out the bad guy. This is kind of similar to that, But anyway, what I'm trying to say is that there's different scenarios. The scenarios tell you how to fight. This is an important way of thinking. And one of the biggest components in any scenario is distance, right? So for me, what I'm seeing here with Captain Fairbairn is this is long range. So what we're seeing here, this is long range combat, okay? And then this right here, obviously, is close range combat, okay? So he believes in long range and close range. I'm not really seeing medium range, and I'm not seeing ground range. Okay. So I came to that same conclusion with my 4 ranges of combat. I got a hint from the Jeet Kune Do system, Bruce Lee's Jeet Kune Do, where they had like 4 ranges of combat, but my ranges, one of the things was how I was, when I was studying Jeet Kune Do, and then they said there was kicking range, punching range, and then there's elbows and knees, or trapping range, and then ground range, right? So those are the 4 ranges. I didn't like that, because I knew that punching and kicking could, it didn't make sense to divide that, because I knew they could cross over, and I knew, well, even Bruce Lee showed in Game of Death, what if you're fighting a Kareem Abdul-Jabbar? His punching range is my kicking range. Or maybe his knees and elbows, that range for him is my kicking range. You know what I mean? So then it didn't like make sense. And I didn't like that. I didn't like that at all. And I remember way back when I first started, the earlier years of when I started martial arts, there was a guy that was in our circles, and this guy was, how tall was this guy? 6'5", maybe more. I mean, he was super tall, super tall. Yeah, and it really felt like going up against a Kareem, Abdul-Jabbar. But anyway, I digress. So I got my 4 ranges from Filipino martial arts. And also because I felt like it was okay to do that, because Bruce Lee, in his books, Bruce Lee's Fighting Method, he doesn't say kicking range, punching range. He called it, like, I forgot what he called it, but it was more closer to like medium range and close range. It was maybe more like in boxing. That was what he was thinking, like being in the pocket or outside the pocket, outboxing. So it was closer to that maybe. I know he was a huge fan of boxing. So after reading that, I was like, I like this way better than the kicking range, punching range, knees and elbows, and then ground. I liked it way better than that. So anyway, when I looked at Filipino martial arts, I also noticed that they had kind of something like that within the styles. So I saw some styles that specialized in long range, and I saw some styles that specialized in medium range, And then I saw some styles that specialized in close range. And I did not see any style that specialized in ground range. But I knew that ground range it existed and it was a factor. So you have to put that in there. Even before the UFC, I understood that, and I did. Not to the extent of understanding ground fighting, but I knew that it was a real thing. Um, but definitely not like, okay, you get the guard and you set them up, and then these are sweeps. You get them out. Nothing like that. Nothing that complex. The world, I don't think, knew that stuff at that time before the UFC. But anyway, most of the world anyway. But I knew it existed. So the four ranges of combat, like I said, for me, I developed through Filipino martial arts, right? So long range, medium range, close range, and ground range. Now, out of those four, it took me a long time, but I basically figured out that I want to be in long range and close range. And the two that I want to avoid is medium range and ground range. And this is what I'm seeing Captain Fairbairn do the exact same thing. And he, in this other video, or was it the same video? No, I think it was another video where he was explaining gutter fighting, and he said, you don't want to play the boxer's game, and you don't want to play the judo guy's game. So the judo guy, once he takes you to the ground, that's obviously ground range. And then also, how do you call it? Boxing to me is medium range. So him saying that and giving props to them, saying that if you play them in their game, you're going to lose. So we're going to do long range, and then close range, it overlaps with judo, but he was saying, how do you cancel out judo? And he was striking. He was doing chin jabs, attacking the eyes, kneeing the balls. He was doing stuff like that, and that would cancel out the judo because you're not playing the way they play. And then obviously he didn't show any. You're not going to the ground. The only time the ground becomes a factor is you're finishing the guy and they're on the ground. So that was it. So it's really no ground fighting is what I'm trying to say. So to me, that was Captain Fairbairn's method. I still believe that to this day. It's my own speculation, and it is, surprise, surprise, it's the same as mine. And some of it, I don't think I even realized this while I was studying his stuff. But now, when I'm looking back on it, I'm going, yeah, no wonder I like this stuff so much, because it's so similar in many ways. And at the end of the day, Eskrima, Filipino martial arts, the Kia, Kali Eskrima Arnis, is a military combatives in itself. It comes from the battlefield, and obviously Fairbairn's system is combatives too. So it just, no wonder it has similarities. And it works. It works to me very similar, works very well. So anyway, I hope this makes sense. That's it for now. Thank you for viewing, and take care, folks.